What is up? Thanks for clicking on this video. We're going to take a look at some highlights of some guys the Twins just added to their organization today. It was the Rule 5 draft today. It was a quiet Rule 5 draft, as it seems to often be the case, but the Twins were incredibly active in the minor league portion of the Rule 5 draft. So before we get into this, I don't want to make it seem like I'm gassing these guys up, but on this channel, we give love to everybody. We take a look at everybody on this channel. We're not talking about just the big club. We're not talking about just the big prospects. We're talking about everybody in this channel. So it's exciting to get some new guys in the organization. Some guys we'll be keeping an eye on, I'm sure, through the system recaps. But I discussed the Twins options that I thought were intriguing in the major league portion of the Rule 5 draft, which were a couple of left-handed pitchers. I talked about that over on my Ko-fi page, which is brand new. That's going to be placed. I'm going to be throwing blog posts out, things of that nature. You know, I just threw that out this morning. Didn't really make sense to make a video on that, seeing it was the day of the Rule 5 draft. So that was going to be old news real quick. So figured to just throw that out as a blog post. That's going to be a great place to check out for kind of odds and ends and extras I'm going to be throwing over there. So check that out. One of the guys I called out on that list actually was drafted by the Chicago White Sox, left-handed pitcher in Boston's system. So I'll be interested to see how that goes for them. But only 10 guys drafted in the major league phase of the Rule 5 draft. None of them Twins. The Twins didn't lose a single player today in any phase of the Rule 5 draft. So that's great for the Twins that they've got to keep all of that talent. And again, like I said, in the minor league phase, they've added some guys. Now, what are the big differences there? On the minor league phase, you don't have to add anybody to your major league roster. So that's one of kind of the big caveats of why there aren't more guys selected in the major league phase of the Rule 5 draft. It's pretty difficult. It's pretty difficult to take a guy and carry him on your active roster all year who has no experience in the big leagues. That's a tough thing to do. So only 10 guys got taken in that phase. But again, in the minor league phase, which does not have any kind of roster rules, the Twins took 4 players. Now, who's eligible in that part? Anybody who is not, A, not on the 40-man roster, and then B, not on team's 38-man AAA roster, which is not something, to my knowledge, that we have access to at the moment. Like, if you were to go and pull up the St. Paul Saints roster on MILB right now, there'd be 15-odd guys or something like that. It's not updated publicly, but yeah, I don't know how it works. Somehow all these clubs know who's eligible and who's not and who's on these lists. So, you know, that kind of gives you a scope of where these guys fit in their previous organizations and how they came to be available. And, you know, like I said, I'm not going to sit here and try to gas these guys up. But I do think especially this first guy the Twins got, Rafael Marcano, is interesting. All these guys are going to have some kind of level of intrigue, and we'll be following them as they join the organization here on the channel. So start off with some information and some highlights on Rafael Marcano. This is a guy who was with the Phillies, originally out of Venezuela, and really came into his own, it seems like, at the end of last year. You see his numbers there, was in High A, the South Atlantic League, and Marcano, over his last 7 games in particular, really pitched well. A 1.80 ERA and 38 strikeouts in 35 innings pitched over his final 7 games. So this guy is a starting pitcher, only threw 64 and 2/3 innings in 2022, bumped that up to 93.1 or 93 and a third innings last year. So he's adding on there. So I'd imagine the Twins are viewing him as a starting pitching option. Also, a guy had 9.4 K per 9 last year in the minors. So Rafael Marcano, left-handed, that's kind of the bigger one. And 23 years old. Again, when I targeted guys I thought might be interesting for the Twins on the major league phase of the Rule 5 draft, I specifically targeted left-handed pitchers. I think that is an organizational weakness right now. There's other ways that they can go about addressing it, but I think this was a really smart and, you know, low-risk ad to grab this guy, Rafael Marcano. You know, he's only pitched, you know, at a High A again, so I would expect him probably to be on the win surge this year, and hopefully continuing that success he had at the end of last year in the Phillies org. The next guy that they took was the only one of these 4 that I don't have highlights for because he's played so low. Rafael Escalante, who's only played in the Florida Complex League with Pittsburgh, but he is a catcher, and you basically cannot have too much catching. So there's a lot of guys throwing at spring training. You need a lot of guys catching these guys at spring training. So I think that definitely played into part of why the Twins targeted this guy in particular from the Pittsburgh organization. He is 22 years old, also from Venezuela. The thing that sticks out about him performance-wise, tremendous on-base guy. Tremendous on-base guy. More walks than strikeouts over his professional career so far, and a 399 OBP to his career. So catcher who gets on base, again, this guy's not played above the complex league, so we're not going to be seeing him up, like competing for a roster spot or anything. But a name to know, Rafael Escalante. Another guy with a couple highlights on Angel Del Rosario from Toronto. Spent most of his year in Dunedin, the Florida State League. Not a lot of video out there on these guys either, but a couple of highlights to share on him. And he played well. He's 20 years old. That's kind of the shot that I got out of this guy. Soon to be 21, but very young. A very young player to be picked up in this phase of the draft. Originally from the Dominican, again in the Blue Jays organization. Plays primarily left field, but has played some second base and some third base. Had an OPS of 793 in the Florida State League last year, which is comfortably above average for that league. Also stole 25 bases, so this guy looks athletic. He looks the part of a guy you can kind of put all around the diamond. Again, 20 years old. I think the hope there is that maybe the physical maturation is going to happen this year, potentially. And then the last guy they took is Sheldon Reed from the Chicago Cubs organization. This is a guy they originally grabbed as an undrafted free agent out of Clemson, who is 26 already. And they had him in high A all of last year in the Midwest League, the same level as the Cedar Rapids Colonels. He was there all last season. Kind of rough, and he pitched well, so kind of rough for him to have not been given an opportunity to move up in their system. I would imagine the Twins are looking at him and certainly expecting him to be able to pitch in Double-A this year as a reliever. He had a 2.22 ERA and 35 strikeouts over his final 28 1/3 innings. So a guy who also finished strong. His overall numbers are pretty good. 3.38 ERA, a 1.22 WHIP, 10.6 Ks per nine of the bullpen. Showing you some highlights here. I like this guy, as a free pitcher, essentially. Again, this guy is a right-handed pitcher, but physically looks pretty well put together. Looks like he's taking care of his body pretty well. We'll be rooting for him and all these other guys. Again, we're not trying to gas these guys up. These guys aren't landing on prospect lists, but intriguing names to keep an eye on. Again, we'll be watching these guys. I watch a lot of minor league baseball throughout the season, and certainly will be taking a look at these guys as they come into the system and see what they do. So thanks so much for checking this one out. We'll talk again soon.